Lesson 24. We continue reading from the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Chapter 1, Sutra 11. The yogin desirous of obtaining perfection should keep Hatha Yoga very secret, for it is potent when kept secret and ineffective when injudiciously revealed. We have seen this before, that Svatmarama tells us to keep yoga secret. There are several things to consider here. One is that he says that if yoga is injudiciously revealed, it's not effective. That is the reality you see in most yoga studios. Most yoga studios, they have very skillful teachers where it comes to physical ability. They're very flexible, very strong, but they don't know anything about yoga. They don't know the purpose of yoga, truly, what you are learning here. And so, they teach yoga, they call it yoga, but there is no sattva. Well, sattva is the most important aspect of yoga. Every element of yoga, yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, meditation, mudra, everything in yoga is about creating sattva. Most yoga teachers never heard of sattva. And they don't know that the purpose of yoga is to cultivate the crown chakra. So that is what this means. If yoga is injudiciously revealed, it doesn't work. It means you need to find a teacher who is initiated into the secrets of yoga and can become your guide in all this. So yoga, you have to see this in a flexible way. Yoga should not be kept secret, but it should be learned in a proper way. It should be taught in a proper way. That's one thing. But there is another thing that in this sutra, this sutra is telling you to be careful what you share with other people. You come to this class, you learn yoga very systematically, starting with yama, niyama, asana, but then you learn kriya, and you learn pranayama. And you learn that pranayama is not breath control, but actually energy control through the power of the mind control. There are things in yoga that you think, wow, this is amazing. And so, when you talk with family members or friends, and you don't explain about yoga from the beginning in a systematic way, but you tell them something about just an element of yoga, an aspect of yoga, energy control, for example. And you say, wow, what I learned today, I learned energy control. You can control energy. And I tried and it feels great. The people that are listening to you saying things like that, they have always liked you, they have always respected you, and now they think, shall I call an ambulance? It sounds like you're a little bit crazy these days. That is because you confront them with something that for you it's normal, because you have very gradually and systematically you have been evolved or developed towards the point that learning about energy control sounds very natural and possible. But then you talk with friends or family and you say something about mudra, or you say something about samadhi, or you say something about energy control, and they think, what the hell is what are they talking about? How is it even possible? Something strange with my friend or my sister or my brother these days. So when you explain about yoga to people who have never had any exposure to it, you need to start from the beginning in the same way that you learned about yoga. And keep it simple. And maybe it's not interesting for friends and family to learn about yama niyama. Talk about asana, but then explain that asana is not movement. Explain that asana is trying to find the balance between movement and rest, so that it leads to harmony. But then it becomes complicated because it always ends up about energy. Harmony then leads to energy rising up, etc. But what I noticed when I started teaching yoga, I would in the beginning, 1997, 98, 99, I would be invited to societies, the British Society in Korea or the European Society in Korea, and I would give lectures about yoga, and I would always in a simple way explain what yoga is about, sharing what I know about yoga, which for me was very normal, but I noticed if you keep it simple, people are really impressed by what you have to tell. Because people know about yoga. Yoga is popular and many people are doing yoga. But then if you tell them something useful that nobody else knows, they become really interested, they become really intrigued. And you just keep it simple. By talking about asana, how it is done properly, you talk about sattva, the balance, the harmony of energy, Shiva and Shakti energy. And while for you it's very simple and logical, for lay people who have done yoga here and there but never correctly, they're very impressed by it because they finally understand something about yoga that they've always wondered about what is it all about and what is it all for. So you shouldn't take it literally that yoga should be kept secret. You just have to be a little bit sensible and sensitive about how you share it with other people. Sutra 12. He who practices Hatha Yoga should live alone in a small hermitage, a mata, situated in a place free from rocks, water and fire, to the extent of a bow's length, free from rocks, water and fire to the extent of a bow's length, and in a virtuous, well-ruled kingdom which is prosperous and free of disturbances. A practice of yoga is designed to transform the practitioner. The situation that is described here is the situation that you find in a monastery or a temple. Why is it important that you isolate yourself from society, at least to some point, that you practice and train and educate yourself in an environment where there are no disturbances, where all the basic needs are met, where there is safety, security, stability, silence. That is because you cannot thrive with yoga if you are in a very corrupt environment with lots of distractions and noise and conflict and danger and when you don't know when you're going to have your next meal or have clean drinking water or so that is the reason why they built temples and monasteries. In the West you call it monastery, in the East you call it a temple. But temples and monasteries in the traditional way, they were always built far away from society, either deep in a forest or very high on a mountain, so that there is very little chance of disturbance or danger. Also very important here is that you need to stay away from rocks, water and fire. Now, Ajita explained this literally. If you're in a room that is too small, that is what being too close to rocks means. And it's true, when you're in a very small room, you feel tap-tap-he, right? So you need to have enough room. When you're too close to water, water influences how you function because your body exists out of 60% of water or more. It's true. And fire, too much heat, it's also not it's disturbing your physical condition. When you, for example, in the winter turn on the floor heating and you make the floor very, very warm and you enjoy lying enjoy the heat from the floor, you become very tamas. It destroys your natural energy production if you indulge in it too much. So that is all true. But there is a much more practical explanation to staying away from rocks, water and fire. Earth, water and fire are the elements of the 3 lower chakras, which are all related to our lower emotions and desires, but also related to fear. So you have to create a situation where you don't have to be afraid. A safe environment. That is for Muladhara chakra. You need to have no shortage of food and water. So temples and monasteries, they have their own garden. They grow their own food so that they don't have to depend on outside sources and sometimes don't get food. So they keep that in their own control. So they grow their own food. And fire, that is ego, ambition, but also in these 3 elements you also find desires. So temples very often are separated. There is a temple for women and a temple for men. And if they are together in one temple or monastery, they are being kept separated. That is also the reason why there are schools where only girls go and only boys go. They try to eliminate distraction because of desires that teenagers start to develop. So staying away from earth, water and fire is more related to your 3 lower chakras than it is actually related to rocks, water and heat. A virtuous, well-ruled kingdom that is prosperous and free of disturbances. Korea is now a prosperous and virtuous kingdom free from disturbances. And you know what happens in such an environment? People naturally become spiritual. The thing is, when a country is at war, when it's not peaceful, when it is not well ruled, a dictatorship like Russia or any other dictatorship where the leaders are only focused on their own interest, people are suffering, there is no room for spiritual development. Because people are too busy with fear. They never know who's going to knock on their door tomorrow, tonight. There's poverty. Only some people are rich in those countries, and most other people are suffering. So they don't even know whether they're going to have a meal tomorrow. So well-ruled kingdom is a place that is at peace, where there is freedom, where there is a system in place that deals with dangers and threats, like a police force, like an army that keeps order. You can see, look in the world around you, you can see that countries where there is no such circumstances, everybody's suffering. And you can see in Europe, in South Korea, in Japan, after the Second World War, after the Korean War, people were struggling, but then when everything settled down, the countries became peaceful and wealthy, people very naturally started to develop spirituality. And so they end up developing interest in yoga, in Buddhism, in Christianity, etc. When you're struggling with your life and you don't know what you're going to have to eat tomorrow, you don't care about these kind of things. You have no room for that. All your energy is below the diaphragm in your 3 lower chakras. But when stability occurs, which is sattva, on a national scale, all citizens benefit from that. So the condition here, described here, is just the foundation for spiritual development. Without it, spiritual development is very difficult. 13, the mata should have a small door and should be without windows. It should be level and without any holes. It should be neither too high, too low, nor too long. It should be very clean, being well smeared with cow dung and free from all insects. Outside, it should be attractive with a small hall, a mandapa, which is actually a veranda, a raised seat, and a well, and surrounded by a wall. These are the characteristics of a yoga mata as laid down by the Siddhas who have practiced Hatha Yoga. So this is a continuation of the previous sutra, where you create the perfect circumstances for your development. It is based on insights from thousands of years ago. So they say that you shouldn't have windows. That's a little bit strange, isn't it? Because my ideal yoga studios has windows all around with a view. But why shouldn't they have windows? That is because in the past, windows were not the windows that we know. They were just a hole in the wall. They didn't have glass window panes that keep the rain and the wind and the heat and the bugs out. So that is why it shouldn't have windows. It shouldn't have holes in the wall. In the modern time that we live in, we have 2 double and triple window panes that insulate the heat and the cold. So the more windows, the better. The floor should be level. In the past, the floor would be clay or soil. If the floor is not level, it will disturb you, whether you do standing exercises or lying exercises or seated exercises. So it should be smooth, makes sense. Should be neither too high, too low, nor too long. So a square room is perfect, like this, here. And free from insects. Insects are a nuisance. If you have mosquitoes flying and biting and flies buzzing around and maybe pakkibolla, that's just distracting and disturbing. So just have to keep all of those distractions out from the place where you want to practice. Interestingly, the author has consideration for beauty. So the place should have a veranda where you don't do asana or meditation. You just sit there after your practice, enjoying a cup of tea and the silence of the surroundings, and you listen to the song of the birds, and you enjoy the sunshine on your skin, and you enjoy the wind blowing through your hair. That is very meditative. That is why people like to go on vacations, go to a nice tropical place, to go to Bali or Phuket or Jeju-do. You go to a nice place where you can just relax and wind down, and this is why people love to go to these kind of places. It gives naturally room for hearing the voice of your heart, hearing the voice of your soul. You connect with yourself in a very natural way, and if you can then practice meditation in such an environment, it's very beneficial. (14) Living in such a hermitage, the yogin, being free in mind of all cares, should practice only yoga all the time in the way taught by your guru. So, the key phrase here is being free in mind of all cares. The condition to be free in mind of all cares has been laid down in Sutra 12 and 13. There's where the conditions are created so that you don't have to worry about anything and can just focus 100% on your practice and your study. (15) Yoga fails by the 6 causes: overeating, overexertion, excessive talk, observance of disciplines or unsuitable disciplines, promiscuous company, and unsteadiness. Overeating, if you eat too much, the digestion of food takes energy. So if you eat a lot, it makes you tired. So you waste a lot of energy that you then cannot have available for your yoga practice, for meditation. Meditation fails, your yoga practice fails, if there is no energy. Simple. Overexertion, maybe you fall in love with yoga because it feels so great every time when you practice yoga. So some people then become very enthusiastic and they practice several hours a day. And then they find out that they become exhausted and that it doesn't feel so good anymore. That's overexertion. Excessive talk. Yeah. I talk a lot when I lecture, but when practicing yoga, also together with the students, I always do that in silence. Talking distracts. And I mentioned it a couple of times. If you go to any current yoga class, teachers constantly talk. They are taught in their teacher training course, they are taught to talk. And if you listen, you close your eyes and you listen to different teachers, you hear that they are all talking in the same kind of voice. As if that sounds very spiritual or so. And they talk about the muscles, and they talk about the joints, and they talk about all the benefits and the physical aspects. But yoga is internal. Talking draws your energy away from you. So they achieve the opposite of what yoga is designed to achieve, that you connect with yourself. So silence is the best condition to practice. When it's time for a lecture, then you have to talk. But outside of that, during meditation, during asana, it's best to do that as quietly as possible. In that condition, even asana becomes like a meditation. That is why for most people who experience Hatha Yoga, only doing asana, even without meditation, it just feels really great. It's meditative. Observance of disciplines. Unsuitable disciplines or disciplines. Now, isn't yoga a discipline? There is some nuance necessary here. If you want to achieve something in life, you cannot achieve anything without discipline. You have to have the willpower, you have to invest your time and your effort. If you don't, you can't achieve anything. You will not achieve anything. But discipline is like a glass of wine. If you drink a little bit of wine, it's healthy. It's good for your heart, good for your blood. Maybe it makes you feel pleasant. But if you drink a whole bottle of wine, it kills you. It becomes a poison. Discipline is like that. When you fall in love with yoga because it feels good and you say, I'm going to make a schedule. Every morning, 6 o'clock, I will wake up, I'll take a cold shower, and I will do yoga. And you do that every day, 7 days a week. After 3 weeks, you hate yoga. If you do it like that. That is unsuitable discipline. Discipline should come from inside. If you make a schedule and you force yourself to do it even when you don't feel good, or when you're too tired, or you just want to enjoy Sunday morning without all the yoga, if you don't allow yourself any room and flexibility, you're going to hate what is supposed to be good for you. So how do you approach that? Because without discipline, you can't achieve anything. You try to practice yoga every day. But there will be a day that you say, today I'm a little bit lazy. I want to eat some extra delicious food, maybe have a glass of wine, and just skip yoga for today. I did that in the beginning. When I started practicing yoga, when I was 20 years old, I practiced every day, but about once a week or so. It's advised also that you practice 6 days and at least have 1 day rest. So once in a while I would just be lazy, or I would want to watch TV, or eat some extra food more than usual. I would allow myself my weakness. I would allow myself to do that. Only to wake up the next morning and not feel good. Because when I started practicing yoga, I practiced every evening before going to sleep. And it made me sleep so deep that I would wake up in the morning in the same position as I went to sleep the evening before. So deep, I would sleep so deep and so peaceful. And I would wake up, jumping out of bed, roaring like a lion, just feeling full of energy immediately. Never grumpy or tired or lazy. No, you wake up full of energy. But those days that you allow yourself to be lazy, to not have the discipline to practice, first, enjoy. Enjoy the choice that you are not going to practice and do something else. Do not feel guilty about it. But next day, when you wake up and you feel different, be aware of that too. And that is where your discipline will come from. Because every time when I allowed myself to be lazy one day, I would promise myself to practice again the next day. Because I don't want to miss that good feeling anymore. I became addicted to that good feeling. But not in a rigid way. Rigid discipline kills your enthusiasm. Allow yourself to be lazy, but do it consciously. Enjoy your extra food, or your glass of wine, or you're watching TV. Just enjoy it. Don't feel guilty. But then notice how you feel different, and let that be your motivation to not skip practice again for the second day. Keep it playful and allow yourself to be human. That is what unsuitable discipline just kills, whatever good intention that you have. Keep in mind also the example of Yubin, whose father wanted her to be a national sports star. He just totally killed his poor little daughter because of unsuitable discipline, rigid discipline. Promiscuous company, when you think about promiscuity, it's usually about relationships, that you have inappropriate relationships. That is not what this means. A promiscuous company is anybody who disturbs you in your yoga practice. That is, for example, if you live in a house with several people, a family, you cannot, if you decide to do yoga while other people are watching TV, listening to music, running around the house, chatting, you're gonna get very irritated and disturbed because you want peace and quiet. You want to focus on your yoga practice. So that is promiscuous company. If you live in a house with other people, you need to plan your yoga in such a way that you are alone. When the other family members or roommates go to work or to school, when they are not at home, you use the opportunity to have the perfect situation in which you can enjoy your yoga practice. Just a matter of planning a little bit. Unsteadiness is about unsteadiness of the mind. You intuitively or instinctively, you know that yoga is really good for you. But most people find it very hard to practice regularly. That is unsteadiness. Yoga works best if you do it every day, or at least very regularly. If you practice only once in a while, because you are distracted, because you want to meet your friends, because you like to be lazy and watch TV, or yoga is still good, even if you do it only once in a while, but it will never be as effective as it is if you practice on a regular basis. Sutra 16, yoga succeeds by the 6 qualifications: zeal, bold determination, courage, true knowledge, firmness of belief in the words of the Guru, and renunciation of company of unsuitable people. Zeal, you know what zeal is? Zeal is kind of a fanaticism. A very, very strong motivation to do something with conviction. And you let nobody and nothing keep you from doing what you want to do. It sounds a little bit extreme. It is a little bit extreme. In the Bible there are the zealots. A zealot is somebody who is very fanatic, a little bit extreme. Bold determination is a better word. Instead of zeal, bold determination. You decide that you want to do that, pursue it. And it doesn't only apply to yoga, it applies to everything in life. God helps only those who help themselves. If you want something, go and get it. Go and pursue it. Because nobody else is going to do it for you. Bold determination. Courage. Courage. Why do you need courage? Because when anybody who practices yoga develops consciousness and sensitivity, and there will be many things that you become aware of that you were not aware of before. And there are things that you need to face, things that you discover about yourself, about your past, about your family, that can be painful. That can be unpleasant. It requires courage to deal with that in a sensible way. It requires courage to be confronted with all kinds of aspects of yourself that you were not aware of before, And you will discover many wonderful qualities that you were not aware of before, but you will also, you will remember things from the past that are not so pleasant. You will remember things that people did that you never thought about before. Yoga makes you so sensitive and conscious that you start to remember things that happened in the past, that other people did, that you might, they can make you very sad or very hurt or very emotional. And you have to really have courage to deal with that and not allow yourself to be affected by that too much. And to deal with these kind of things, we will, in lesson 28 and 29, we will talk about pratyahara. That's the yoga way of dealing with this increased consciousness and sensitivity. So we will come to that later. True knowledge. What is true knowledge? What is in the book is that true knowledge is that look, there are, let's just limit it to yoga teachers. There are many yoga teachers who teach yoga and they say things that are not untrue. It's not that they are lying, but what they are teaching or what they are saying is something that they learned from a book. Is something that they just repeat from what their teacher told them. They never checked if it is true. They never added their own insight. So it's just like a robot repeating something without content, really. That is untrue knowledge. It's not a lie, it's not incorrect, but it has no value, it has no depth. True knowledge is when you read a book, you think about it, you develop your own insights based on your own experiences, and you then share it with people. That is true knowledge. And everybody has their own true knowledge. Just don't become a robot like other people, like many people, just repeating something that other people have said or written down without questioning it. Because the situation will occur that you say something and one of your students will come to you and say, how does it work? You just said something very interesting, but can you explain a little bit more? And then you have nothing to say because you never really thought about it, because you just repeat something that somebody else told you. So it's not a lie, but it's also not true knowledge because there's no content. You haven't contemplated the issue yourself. That is what true knowledge means. That it's something that comes from your heart based on your own experience and insights. Firmness of belief in the words of the Guru. You know, that is often misinterpreted as if you should not question what I tell you. And I remember years ago, I think Korean society is changing a lot, of course, but I've been in Korea for 25 years, and one of the things in Korea, especially 20 years ago, was never question a teacher. Because your teacher will feel insulted if you question them. That is based on a text like this. And it is a wrong interpretation. Because this does not mean to just blindly believe what your teacher tells you. It makes teachers arrogant. And they get angry when you question something. They should stimulate that you question. Because that is the intellectual process. Stimulation of the intellectual process. What does this mean? It means I'm not perfect as a teacher. You are not perfect as a teacher when you are a teacher. So I'm sitting here trying to convey my knowledge, my insights in yoga. And there are many things that you really like because it makes you realize things you didn't realize before. Or maybe sometimes you don't agree with something that I say. Maybe sometimes you think, well, you know, that doesn't make sense what you're saying there. So, firmness in belief of the words of the Guru means that you accept your teacher to not be perfect. If you cannot do that, what happens is that you will argue every time. Every time when I say something that you don't agree with, you will argue. And that will just destroy the class. You understand that, right? And you give me the benefit of the doubt. Overall, what I'm teaching, that gives new insights. It really helps people. Sometimes I say something that doesn't make sense, or in your eyes doesn't make sense. In my eyes it makes sense, otherwise I wouldn't say it. You don't agree with that. That's fine. Just like I don't have to agree with everything or anything that you or other people are saying. That doesn't make them bad people or bad teachers. And renunciation of company of unsuitable people, that is basically the promiscuous company in Sutra 15. Renunciation of company of unsuitable people is to stay away from anybody that disturbs you or distracts you from your yoga practice. It's actually a reason why I came to Korea. I had to distance myself from my brothers. I come from a big family. There were 4 boys and 3 girls. And in age, very close together. Every year one child was born. So I grew up with my brothers. I'm the youngest of the 4 brothers. So I grew up with the second and the third brother. I'm the 4th. We did everything together. As teenagers, things went wrong. My parents divorced, and children are just really affected by that very deeply. So we were affected by that very deeply. And the 2 brothers that I grew up with, that we did everything together, they went onto the wrong path. It ended up with drug abuse and alcohol abuse, and I went in that direction too, until I decided I didn't want to go there, until I discovered yoga and took control of my life. And family, you know, family ties is, you cannot rationalize that. That is your blood. And I tried to focus on myself, but I wanted to help my brothers because I was helped. I was helped by discovering yoga, and as a result of that, all kinds of good things happened in my life. I wanted them to experience the same, to try to get rid of their addictions to drugs and alcohol, and it didn't work. It doesn't work. But because it's family, you can't let it go. Even though you try, you can't let it go. It keeps disturbing you. It keeps you from focusing on what is really important for you. So in my case, it cost me, every time I was focusing on what was important for me, yoga of course, but also work and study. I went to school after work at night. I would go to night school. It was very difficult to stay on track. I would drop out of school and then start again. I would drop out of yoga and then start again because of the situation with my family. So one day I called Ajita and I said, Ajit, can I come and I need to talk with you. And he reluctantly agreed. He didn't really like it, but it's, of course, as a teacher, it's one of his tasks. When the student is in trouble, you have to at least listen to what they have to say. So he said, okay, why don't you come? And I went to his house, and he told me to sit down on a small IKEA bench. And he looked at me and he said, okay, now tell me. So I started telling him about my brothers, about my past. And within 1 minute, he said, Ron, stop. What do you want? So I said, I want to go to Korea. That was my passion. After I discovered Korean martial arts, I just wanted to go to Korea. So he said, what do you want? I want to go to Korea. Then he said, what do you need to do for that? So I said, I need to finish my training with you. I need to finish my night school. And I need to finish earning enough money, saving enough money to be able to stay in Korea for at least 2 years. So he said, from today, do not worry about your past anymore. Just focus only on what you need to do to go to Korea. And that was the best advice that I ever had. From that moment, I went back to school because I had dropped out. I registered with Ajita again for his course. And I finished everything without interruption anymore. And I went to Korea. I needed to distance myself from my brothers because they had become an obstacle. That is unsuitable people. They are my family. I love them dearly. I want the best for them. But they kept me from developing. If I hadn't done yoga and developed consciousness and increased sensitivity, I would have probably spent the rest of my life in that situation. That is what most people do. But as a yogi, connecting with your heart's content, discovering what you really want to do in life, that becomes the most important thing. And everything else becomes a distraction. And most things you can deal with, but family, that is just something that is very difficult to rationalize. You say blood is thicker than water or something like that. Those expressions exist for a reason. You cannot just give up on your family. I had to deliberately and consciously separate myself from them in order to remove the obstacles that kept me from developing and doing what was most important for me in my life. So what follows next, still part of Sutra 16, is actually the yamas and the niyamas. But they are a little bit different from those that you learned. As Patanjali, we learned yama and niyama based on Patanjali. So there are 5 yamas, 5 niyamas. According to Svatmarama, there are 10 yamas and 10 niyamas. But if you look at them, they're very similar to what we did. You just see that there are several that are double. So it's not really, you learned about the yamas and niyamas in detail already. It's not really important that we go through those 20 that Svatmarama is suggesting, because they come down to the same as what we have learned. Sutra 17. Asanas are treated first because they form the first stage of Hatha Yoga. Asanas make one firm, free from maladies, and light of limb. I have nothing to add to that. Questions? Okay, let's have a short break. Then we can start with asana.